Now, an internally driven behavior is something that they're oblivious to whether anyone else is around. It's meeting an internal need. A memory triggers an action. Their their emotions trigger them to act. They're anxious, so they start stimming. All of those things are trying to meet their own needs. They don't actually need or want you to interfere or provide solutions for them because they're fixing their own problems.
Hi, I'm Staci Neustadt. I am a speech language pathologist and the CEO at Making Sense of Autism, and I'm a student of Susan.
And I'm Susan Golubock. I am a now retired occupational therapist who has worked many, many years after I discovered even my own autism with other autistic individuals. I founded Making Sense of Autism because of my passion to not only understand my brain and how it worked differently, but to try to explain what I've learned to other people so that they're more understanding and therefore more accepting and more accommodating to autistic individuals.
So, our goal is to help you provide the right support without trying to fix autism, but by understanding it. So, whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or just someone who wants to learn, you're in the right place. Be sure to subscribe and join us every week. We talk about a new topic. So, in some of our trainings, we talk about socially driven behavior versus intrinsically driven behavior. And I know many people probably just view behavior as behavior. They see you're not doing what I ask you to do, or why are you doing that? And we're not quite sure how to respond to those behaviors. Now, I know last week we talked about, communication as behavior, but let's kind of break these up a little bit more and explain to us what is socially driven behavior versus intrinsically behavior. Do we deal with them differently, or how do we respond?
Right. And I think the key difference is what they want from you by that behavior. Socially driven behavior, they want you to either notice or not notice because they're very aware of how you might react to that behavior. So they're either going to do it within your view because they want you to jump in and solve the problem that they're dealing with that they can't deal with by themselves. So they act out in some way to get your attention, or they totally wait until they think no one is paying attention to do the action because they know they're probably going to get a response that they don't want from you. And sometimes they will even do a bad behavior because they know what you're going to do, which is generally a punishment of some kind. And that punishment may actually be something they would prefer, like being sent to the principal's office instead of having to do the assignment they're doing in the class. Being sent home, being isolated from their peers when they're autistic and they're overwhelmed by the presence of their peers anyway. So they would prefer that you punish them because it meets that particular need at that time. So socially driven behaviors, they will always look to find out whether you're watching ahead of time, or they will look at you after they've done it to see how you're going to respond to it. Mm-hmm. Now, an internally driven behavior is something that they're oblivious to whether anyone else is around. It's meeting an internal need. A memory triggers an action. Their emotions trigger them to act. They're anxious, so they start stimming. All of those things are trying to meet their own needs. They don't actually need or want you to interfere or provide solutions for them, because they're fixing their own problems. They're meeting their own needs. They're responding with what their body tells them they need to do. I have to go. I didn't drink water. I'm so dying. So they get up out of their chair. They don't bother to ask you. They just get out of their chair, run out of the room, and go to a drinking fountain. They're meeting their own needs. And so how you respond is going to be very similar, the two things, but recognizing, are they asking you for help, or are they not necessarily wanting your intervention or help, is a big difference. So if they want your reaction, think about the reaction you're going to give them. Is the reaction you're giving what they actually are looking for? They want you to intercede because they threw that spitball at that kid because they couldn't think of another way to get that kid to stop doing this annoying behavior, like whispering at them or nagging them or teasing them. And they wanted you to come in and interfere. So think about how you're going to respond, and are you actually reinforcing that behavior by punishing them, or acting only on the behavior and correcting that behavior rather than recognizing the need that they're communicating behind that behavior. Why did they throw that spitball? Not that's a bad thing to do, so therefore I'm going to punish you by sending you to the principal's office. But why did you throw that spitball? What was he doing that you found you needed to throw a spitball at him for? Now you're being curious as to what their behavior was communicating. Now you can offer a reasonable solution, or some options at least, for what they might do. Now, if they start stimming, that's an internally driven thing. It's good to recognize it. They're not necessarily asking you to change or correct or do anything about it, but recognizing and say, you look anxious. And you can still offer, is there anything that I could suggest that might make you less anxious? Do you need to take a break? So your response will still be the same: to observe the behavior, define what it may mean, and then find out from them if your thinking is correct, and then maybe offer some solutions. So your response may be the same, but recognizing the need that they want your help, versus they're taking care of their own need.
And what I want to add to the intrinsic is intrinsic motivation, which might look like elopement because they're intrinsically motivated to run out and get the toy that they remembered was in the other classroom, or they are intrinsically motivated to go outside, so they might elope to go outside. And then the other piece too is, and I don't know where this would fall, but I almost feel like there's that reaction behavior, of maybe someone doing something to you, and it's almost like a trigger behavior. And then so that almost has its own category as well. Would you respond in that same way? So if it's a triggered kind of reaction behavior that's occurring, that is either because of you as an adult to trigger them, or maybe another kid triggered them, what do you do with that kind of behavior? Because I know all three of these get discipline. Like when you think about it, how do we react to them right now? All of them get disciplined. Stop that. Don't do that. You're being naughty, whatever. But we're saying, let's not do that because it doesn't fix it. So when it's a reaction behavior, should we do the same thing you've recommended for the other two?
I think totally. Stop and observe. This is what I saw you do. And then be curious. Why did you do that? Now, obviously, they're not going to be able to tell you why in most cases. They just, especially the reaction, they just reacted. They didn't think about it. They don't have a purpose behind why they did it. That was purely a reaction. The stimming is just a reaction to stress. So they may not. So asking them why they're doing it, make some educated guesses. Look at the environment and what's going around. Be curious. I also noticed that this other kid was making a lot of noise. Did that bother you? Um, is that what you were reacting to? Do a little analysis of what, but you're being curious and you're speculating. You're not telling them. You're speculating. Could it be this? I really want to understand. You're letting them know. You want to understand before you decide how to respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because then when you give suggestions, you can be able to say, well, the way you reacted poses a problem. It's a problem for me. It's a problem that's distracting to the other kids. And you can talk about the problem that their behavior caused. Um, but as far as dealing with it, here's some suggestions that you might consider that would work better for everyone's needs. It would meet your need and it would meet my needs and the other kids' needs. Um, and yes, that's asking a lot of thought processes at the moment. You may not have the resources to pull from, but just at least starting with observing it and speculating to ask, because they will recognize when you say it where they can't recall the words to tell you, but they may recognize, yeah, that's it. Then you're going to get at the bottom of it. Then you have a better idea how to respond.
Yes. So with all three of these, and I guarantee the behaviors that you see in a classroom or a therapy session or wherever fall into one of these categories, whether it's social, intrinsic, meeting your own need, or a reaction or triggered response. All three of these, first observe, get curious, and then ask yes, no questions. Don't tell them and assume you know, and make sure you're using yes, no questions so that they're easy to respond to, and then problem solving together of maybe that wasn't the best way to deal with that, or here's some different solutions. So this is such a shift because I know we react when we see these behaviors. And so, but I love this different process. So if you try this week, come back, jump in our comments, let us know how it goes. And I think you'll be surprised at what a detective you become with some of these things. And then the individual's response to your response will change because they're going to be like, oh, wow, they're not getting mad at me. They're getting curious with me. They're trying to solve this with me. And that builds connection. So you're not building that wall of don't do that. It is connection. Let's fix this together. Love it. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Staci.